What's up, Inside Out? How are you guys? Guys, I'm so pumped to be with y'all tonight. Shameless plug, I really love being at BBIO. Of all the Inside Outs here, being at Brownsbridge Inside Out is my absolute favorite place to be, so I am pumped to be with you guys. For those of you that I have not had the chance to meet yet, hey, hi, hello. My name is Ashlyn, and it's just an honor to get to be here with y'all. And if this is your first time here at Inside Out, welcome. We're so excited you're here. We hope that you come back. And also shout out to the baptism guests. I mean, that was incredible, wasn't it? Give it up for Aubrey and Grace again. I know, absolutely amazing. Well, guys, I get to be here tonight, and I get the privilege of finishing up this series called Talk of the Town that you all have been in. In this series, Talk of the Town, you've been learning about Jesus. You've been learning about his life and his ministry, and honestly, just how he lived while he was here on earth. And going even farther than that, you have been given a few ways that you can live out your life to make his name known to all of the people around you. And so let me recap it really fast. The first week, Heath kicked us off, and he was talking about how you will experience more when you become less. You'll experience more peace, more joy, more freedom. You fill in the blank. You'll experience more when you become less. For those of you that don't know, this is a less than sign. If you don't know what this is, then maybe you need to go back to like kindergarten math class. I was a math teacher, so also shameless plug, I'll be your tutor. Come see me afterwards. But you'll experience more if you become less. The second week was the amazing Back to School Bash. How many of y'all were here Back to School Bash with the rock wall and the roller skating rink? Yes, and Heath talked about how we are to be light and we're supposed to shine brightest where it's darkest. And if you weren't here that week, I'd really encourage you to go back and look on YouTube and watch Heath's talk, because he gave a really powerful illustration at the end of how you guys can be light in a really dark world. And then last week, if you were here, Nigel talked about how when you see people like Jesus sees people, you'll start to treat people like Jesus treats people. And Jesus is love, so we're called to be love to the people around us. And so this week, we are going to hit on this fourth icon up here, and I'm not going to tell you guys what it means yet. I want you to kind of take in this picture, start to think about it, see if you can piece it together as we go throughout tonight. But this week, we're going to talk about what this symbol means. But first, I have a question for you guys. Have you ever been in a place where you are trying to make a decision, but this decision is a bit intimidating, it's a bit scary, it's maybe even a bit risky? Think in your own life, when have there been times that you've been faced with decisions that are honestly scary and hard and risky to make? If I think back in my own life, I can think of a multitude of times where I'm faced with a decision and it honestly feels kind of paralyzing because it is so scary. But the biggest and most intimidating decision I think I have made to this day is when I actually decided to move here to Georgia. So for those of y'all that don't know, I'm actually from a city called Greenville, South Carolina, one of the best places to take a day trip to. So if y'all haven't been, you should gather your friends, go there on a day trip. I love Greenville, love my hometown. But when I graduated college, I had the option to either stay in Greenville and teach middle school math, told you I was a math teacher, or move here and start a residency program through North Point. Now, I knew nothing about North Point. I barely knew anybody here. I didn't know the area. It was really, really scary. But as you can see, you can kind of guess what I ended up deciding. Yeah, I moved here. But in this process of deciding to move here, there were points that were kind of easy and points that were hard. The easiest part was literally like pulling out my computer and filling out this online application for this residency program, because at that point in time, I was still in Greenville with my family, with my friends, honestly hidden behind a computer screen, and it felt safe. But then the rubber really met the road when it was like, wait a second, I actually have to come to Georgia. And so there are two particular days I remember. One is the day that I drove down here all by myself and came and had a panel interview that felt like I had like 78 different people on it. It was probably like 4 people on this panel, but I felt like I was being interviewed by 78 different people, and I had to meet people, experience Georgia, get to know the area, and I felt like I was gonna throw up the whole entire day. Y'all ever felt like that before? In a moment where like you literally are paralyzed, feel like you're gonna throw up, you're so nervous. And then the second time I felt like this was the day I actually moved here. I packed in my car, headed from South Carolina on down to Georgia, and as I'm pulling into my townhome driveway, once again, literally felt like I was gonna throw up. And this is why I felt like this, is because that moment of sitting there and applying on my computer to do this program, that was one thing, and I wasn't actually putting anything into action yet, but actually moving here, actually doing it felt completely different. And if you think about it, I think you guys would say that you've had similar experiences. Maybe it's the fact that homecoming's coming up and you're trying to figure out how to ask so-and-so to go with you. And so like you've made the sign, whatever, you've planned out the day. But then the day actually gets there and you get this pit in your stomach and you're like, oh my word, what am I even doing right now? Or maybe you're, in a class with a group and you've agreed to give the presentation and you're fine, feeling great until the day of the presentation. Then once again, that like pit in your stomach, about to throw up, so nervous. Or maybe you play sports, or maybe you're in theater and it's the day of the tryouts or it's the day of auditions, and deciding you want to do something versus actually getting to the day of having to do it, they're two completely different things. And I think it's because in between deciding and actually doing often sits fear. Now, this could be fear of failure. It could be fear of rejection. That's honestly one of my greatest fears. It could be fear of the unknown. You've just never experienced it before. You don't know what's coming next. And so sometimes we get caught in this cycle and this spiral of all of these what if questions. And we get ourselves into this hole, and we're trapped and we're paralyzed by this fear. Fear feels like a barrier to us. It feels like something that'll stop us from continuing to move forward. And this applies in so many different areas of life. And so when it comes to your faith, when it comes to your relationship with Jesus, when it comes to living like Jesus has asked us to do, like the be less, be light, be love, it's the same exact thing. Sometimes we have this fear of failure. What if we are actually living for Jesus at school or on our sports teams or in our theater programs, and we make mistakes and we feel like people are just gonna write us off because we're not perfect? What if we start living for Jesus in those places and all of a sudden we are completely outcasted from our friend group and completely excluded from things that we once were in because we've said that we want to live for Jesus and we want to live like him? Or maybe there's just the unknown of like, if I remotely try to be vocal about my faith, if I remotely try to live like Jesus, what's gonna happen? What if this person gets upset at me? What if I get left out of these things? All of the what if thoughts spiral in your head. And so you feel like you're stopped, like you've hit a barrier and you can't move forward. But I don't think that fear actually has to be a barrier like that. No, I actually think that fear, as awful as it may sound, can end up being a channel that gets you to a point where you're dependent enough on God that it's actually a motivation to keep moving forward because you know that God is going to carry you through every step of the way. You guys sing the song Deliverer all of the time, and that God will carry you through. Do you actually believe it? But I don't want you just to take my word for this. I want you to actually take the word of Jesus. And so the past few weeks, as you've been learning about the life of Jesus, we've been in the New Testament, which is the second half of the Bible. And at the very beginning of this second half of the Bible are 4 books known as the Gospels. And I love the Gospels because the Gospels literally are all about the life and ministry of Jesus. And this is so important because, guys, Jesus is God. So if you're in a place that you're like, I want to know God more, then go look at the Gospels, go learn about Jesus because he's your roadmap to that because he is God. And so today we're gonna look at a book called Matthew, which is the very first of these 4 Gospels. And Jesus is talking to his 12 disciples, his 12 closest friends here. And he's honestly giving them a really long message because he's sending them out to go live like him, to go share about him with all of the people of the world. And so honestly, it's kind of like a pep talk that he's giving them. And if the disciples at the time who got to interact with Jesus on a daily basis needed a pep talk, honestly, I think we probably need a pep talk too, because this fear can be really stifling at times. So this is what I want you guys to look at. Look at the beginning of Jesus' pep talk. He says, I am sending you out like sheep among wolves. Encouraging, right? So encouraging. Sheep among wolves. I mean, those sheep are going to get torn apart. But as discouraging as this may initially sound, the longer I think about it, the more comforting it actually becomes for me, because what I'm realizing is like, hey, Jesus recognizes that what he's asking the disciples to do, what he's asking each and every one of you to do, is hard and it's scary. He's not sugarcoating it. He's not beating around the bush. He's direct and he's to the point. And I think that actually builds trust for the rest of what he's about to say in this talk. And so he continues on talking to his disciples, and he says, but when they arrest you, once again, Jesus very direct and blunt, when they get arrested, he says, do not worry about what to say or how to say it. At that time, you will be given what to say. For it will not be you speaking, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. Jesus says, hey, you're actually going to be given what to say in the moment that you need to be speaking, because it's the Spirit of your Father, it's God that is going to be speaking through you. I bet you these disciples felt so inadequate. I bet you they felt like they didn't have what it takes. I bet you they felt like they weren't good enough. And if we're honest with ourselves, we all feel that way all the time. I felt that way today leading up to this moment right now. I'm not good enough. I don't have what it takes. How in the world am I going to keep moving forward in this? But what Jesus is saying is, hey, you're not alone, because you have a good God who is with you and who's going to provide every single thing that you need. And he's telling to the disciples. And guys, the God of the disciples is the same God that we get to experience each and every day. So if it's true for them then it's true for us now. Jesus continues on in this pep talk, and he says, are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet one of them will fall to the ground outside your Father's care. And even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Now, I don't know about how many of y'all, I don't normally go around talking about sparrows on a daily basis, but Jesus at the time is giving an analogy that the disciples are going to understand, because this applied to their everyday life. Same as us talking about different examples at school and in life, Jesus is using this same method to drive home a point. And he's saying, are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Meaning they're literally worth nothing. They're cheaper than the 2 for $85 cats that I saw on the Humane Society's website not too long ago. They're literally worth nothing. And then he gets to the point where he says, but not one of them is going to fall to the ground outside of your Father's care, because God cares about them so much. And then he says, and even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. And I don't know how much hair the disciples had. I'm guessing maybe it's more than Heath Miller, who has few hairs on his head right now. So it probably took a lot of counting. But that's a very specific, very unique fact to the disciples that Jesus knows, because he cares about them. And he gives these 2 examples because he's trying to drive home this point of saying that, so don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. Don't be afraid, because you're worth more than many sparrows. Guys, the disciples had immense value to God, and each and every single one of you in this room have immense value to God. And you've probably heard this time and time again of like, oh yeah, God loves me, God's for me, I'm worth it to him. But I would challenge you, if you actually take this to heart, if you actually believe it, it could literally change the rest of your life. And it could be so empowering and so encouraging to know that you're worth it to him. So Jesus is finishing up this pep talk, and he's saying, hey, I get it. I recognize what I've called you to do is hard. But in the hard, 1, I'm going to provide for you, and I'm going to give you exactly what you need to say. And then 2, you guys are worth it to me. I care about you. Of course, I'm never going to leave you alone. And for me, that's encouraging. That's encouraging to be able to live like Jesus. But I think I stop and ask myself, why live like Jesus? Like, yes, I realize all of this is here, but what is actually my motivation for living like Jesus? What actually makes it worth it? And so I think the Apostle Paul actually kind of ties all of this together for us. He writes in a book to the Colossians, in a letter to the Colossians, this is what he says. He says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. whatever you do, meaning living for Jesus, meaning being less, being light, being love, do it for the Lord and not for human masters. And he continues on to say, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It's the Lord Christ you are serving. Now, I think it's so easy to kind of skip past this word inheritance here, but I want to zero in on it for a second. This word inheritance, if you look up the Greek word, which is actually what the Bible in the New Testament was written in, it was written in the language of Greek. If you look up that word, it actually means eternal blessedness, which is showing me that this inheritance goes far beyond what we just experience here on earth every day. It actually has to do with eternity. And for those of you that have a relationship with Jesus and that have chosen to trust him and believe in him, just like we were celebrating in the baptisms tonight, for those of you that is where you're at, you are going to be with Jesus forever, for eternity. You're never going to be separated from him. You're always going to have a good God that is for you and loves you and is with you till the end of time, for eternity. And that makes it so worth it to live for Jesus, because you're living out of gratitude for what he's done for you. And then if you continue to think about it, if you are living that way, then hopefully the people around you, the people that you pass at school, the people that you pass in the grocery store, or that you play sports with, that you're in theater with, whoever it may be, hopefully those people are getting to experience Jesus through you, because you're now a representation of him. And then those people can then in turn believe in him too, and then also receive this same inheritance of getting to be with him forever. And so Jesus calls us to live a life like he lived, and he tells us he's going to be with us, and he tells us that it's worth it because of this inheritance of being with him forever. And so what I want you guys to walk away with is that the reward of boldness is worth the risk. The reward of your boldness, the reward of you living a life like Jesus and not being scared to talk about it at school and in your everyday lives, it's actually worth the risk because of how it could change your life and how it could change the lives of the people around you each and every day. You're going to have a life of greater purpose. You'll have a life of greater hope. You'll have a life of greater joy. And not because it's not going to be hard. We saw that Jesus knows it's going to be hard. But because when you do life with Jesus, it's so much better. But there are going to be a lot of times in life that you're faced with decisions that seem risky. And fact of the matter is, if it seems risky, you are only going to do it if it seems worth it to you. And I can stand up here all day long and tell you, hey, yeah, it's worth it. Jesus says this, it's worth it. I've experienced that it's worth it. But you're the only one that can decide for yourself. And so I want you guys to really think about this. Is it worth it to you? But I want you to think about these 2 points before you answer this question. And the first one is, I want you to imagine what might be on the other side of your boldness. Imagine what might be on the other side of you living a life like Jesus, of you being courageous and bold enough to actually share your faith with the people around you. Guys, it could lead to belonging for both you and the people that you interact with on a daily basis. It brings such a community when you're all focused on the same thing and when you're all getting to experience the love that Jesus offers you. It could bring belonging. It could be someone's baptism video, just like Grace and Aubrey tonight. They're up here telling all of you that they believe in Jesus because of the fact that Jesus has worked through the people in their life to get them to a point where they actually believe in him. And so I know there's a lot of you in this room that maybe you're considering baptism right now. Go for it. Go for it. Go for it. That is a way of actively being bold and sharing Jesus with all the people around you. And I think another thing that can come on the other side of your boldness is just better decisions and better relationships. Jesus truly, truly, truly does make your life better. Now, secondly, I want you guys to choose to spend time with God. Because if you don't spend time with God, then you don't know God. And I don't know if it's just me or y'all, but you're not going to be bold for someone that you don't know. You're not going to be bold for someone that you don't know. And the only way to get to know him is to spend time with him, just like you would spend time with any of your friends or any of your family members. And so before you decide for yourself, is it worth it to live like Jesus? Imagine and visualize what it could be like if you did, and then actually spend time with God and get to know him so that you know what you're being bold for. Now, to kind of recap this whole entire series, we talked about how Jesus wants you to be less. It's less than sign. How he wants you to be light in a dark world to the people around you. How he wants you to be love. And then this fourth one, how he wants you to be loud, how he wants you to be bold. And so here at Inside Out tonight, you guys are going to leave small group with a sticker that has all of these 4 icons on it. All these 4 icons on it that you can put on a water bottle, a laptop, your mirror. I don't care where you put it somewhere so that you can see it and you can be reminded, one, of what Jesus has called you to do, how he's called you to live for a higher purpose. And then 2, I want this megaphone right here to, yes, be a reminder to live out those things, but also to be a reminder that you're never alone and you have a God who is with you because of the pep talk that Jesus gave to the disciples and because that is true for each and every one of you in this room. And so you're going to go to small group tonight, just like you always do. And you're going to get to unpack this. And what my challenge would be for you is to actually talk about it and come around each other and encourage each other in it, because it's so much easier to do these things when you have community around you than if you're doing it alone. So let me pray for us, and y'all are going to go to small group. God, I thank you for this day. I thank you for these Inside Out students. They truly are incredible. I thank you for Aubrey and for Grace for having the courage to share their story and get baptized tonight. And I thank you for what you're doing in their hearts and in their lives. I ask that you would be with the small group leaders and the small groups in this room, that small group time tonight would be life-changing, that they would truly lean in and think of how they can live for you, how they can live a better life throughout this next school year. I thank you for who you are to us, and I thank you for your goodness to us. In your name I pray. Amen.